All right, hey, let's get started. It's 7:30. Find a chair. Welcome to the first meeting of the 2026 year for the Dade chapter of the Florida Native Plant Society. My name is Steve, and I'm really sorry to tell you about all this horrible cold weather that we are experiencing. For those of you who are new members, you get a cookie over there. And if you are visiting tonight, not yet a member, and you enjoy the meeting, please consider joining our not-for-profit organization, which promotes the conservation and the use of native plants. The membership fee is $35 for a year, and it comes with a digital magazine, a newsletter, and you can go on to field trips. Is there anyone here? Right, let's keep it to a dull roar, people. Is there anyone here because they read about our meeting in the South Dade newsletter? How about the Coral Gables Gazette? Redland View. All right, that's a negative. I want to thank Karina and Sergio Gomez, Karina our VP and Sergio our VIP, who helped set up the Valentine themed coffee and refreshments. I also want to thank Sebastian, who brought in 2 dishes tonight. His mother's ambrosia, which is pistachio ambrosia, and his amazing banana pudding, which is pretty spectacular, I must say. Well, I'm telling you now, I didn't have to. And if you enjoy the refreshments, you can put $1 in the box. Most of us don't carry cash now, but there's a donate button on our page, and you can give us $1 on there. It's non-obligatory, but it helps pay for future refreshments. If you contribute refreshments, you can get reimbursement. If you want to join and bring a dish, we can either, reimburse your costs, or you can exchange it for raffle tickets. Thank you to all the plant raffle donors. It's a huge spread, some really nice stuff. And when you bring in a plant, similarly with the refreshments, you can exchange it for a raffle ticket for each plant you bring in. We do ask that you label your plants as best you can. And if you aren't sure what it is, provide a blank label. All money brought in from raffle ticket sales goes toward the organization as donations. Many of these are donated by, I'll mention Raul Moas, who also, if you don't win the raffle, some of these things are sold on our online plant store. And Raul has a little bit of an announcement about the available plants on the online plant store.
Sure. So the first time in a year and a half, we will be soon having the priming working. They sold out pretty quickly when we first put them on at the beginning of last year. Many people signed up to get them again. So that was not for the raffle. That's just to show you that you've never seen it. You're right. That's it. Right. So quality, check out, has no leaves. And then the flower, 1 or 2 spikes, 2 spikes, depending on all we have. Then the leaves come around with it. This is around the time we get to start the flower. With Chinese money, we bought a number of stuff and grow flowers by that.
It is a perennial, though. So you
very much, very long. It will grow. So these are our most expensive items. They were $19 last year. They're $20 now. They are. And there's a sign on the sheet there. If you want any, just leave your number, your naming number, name and email, and I will contact
Who do they leave that with?
That sheet there,
Okay, there's a sign up. Okay.
I would pick it up at the end and when they're ready, the way they're going to, I think they'll be ready, they'll be flowering in maybe 2 weeks.
Just in time for Valentine's Day. So it's a good date gift. All right. Anything else to add, Raul? Thank you. You could also give your loved one for Valentine's Day a coffee mug like this with very loving plants and animals on it and our cool chapter logo. Similarly, we have t-shirts and tote bags for sale. So when you buy them that cute stuffed animal, you can put it in a tote bag. Do we still have handouts that we're giving away? Not so much? Okay. I want to remember one of our members who passed away earlier this month. Jim Gross died at his home. And Jim was omnipresent at meetings, work days, and field trips, and one of our most active members. It was weird not seeing Jim at last Saturday's field trip, and it's going to be weird not seeing him tonight. So I would ask for those of you with a glass, or those of you who want to raise your arms, to Jim's memory. Jim. All right. Some other announcements. February 6th is the deadline to submit any applications for the Florida Native Plant Society Conservation Grant to the chapter board, not to the state. The chapter has to approve your grant application. This grant, you can learn about it online. There's a link in the newsletter. You could also search for it using the Google. Applications, you email us your application at dadefnps@gmail.com. I think it's awarded up to $5,000. And it's usually reserved for rare plant conservation and rare plant habitat conservation. Okay. Your chapter board of directors is also accepting, for the first time in a long time, nominations for the 2026 Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Award, which is given to the person or entity which has been outstanding in native plant conservation in Miami-Dade or Monroe counties. If you want to nominate someone or a group, we ask that you write a few paragraphs in support of your nomination and submit it to the chapter leadership, again, using the dadefnps@gmail.com. The award recipient is voted upon by your chapter board of directors and will be presented at our annual members meeting in May. Next month, on February 24th, Eric King will be giving a presentation called The Ruins of Orchid Jungle, which is in Redland. He is the interpretive programs manager for Miami Eco Adventures of the Miami-Dade County Parks, Recreation, and Open Spaces is what they call themselves now. Also in February, I'm still putting together a field trip, probably going to be on the February 28th. And I'm thinking of going to Nixon Smiley Pineland Preserve in an effort to get people more familiar with that site, because we have another program which we started this year with our conservation and restoration team. Is Scott here? All right, Scott, stand up. So Scott chairs along with Carmen Ferriero. And if you want to do your good deed, you can join Scott and Carmen, where they try and eradicate weeds and invasive things and help clean up some of these environmentally endangered lands. So it's fun. Oh, good. You attended. Awesome. So, and it's nice type of volunteer activity, because all you have to do is show up, and when you're done, you just dust your hands off and you go home. It's not like you have homework. Do you have any scheduled for next month?
Yes. The thing I really need to know from club members is who would like to show up on weekdays or who would like to show up on weekends.
Well, how many of you think you could show up on a weekday, or is that really hard for you? Raise your hand.
Yeah.
And how many think you might be able to show up on a weekend? So probably twice as many.
Well, thank you, Cole. Yeah, it was sure.
Well, you're not working hard enough.
And I will give just one quick pitch about putting the Nixon Smiley, what the yield department will give to us on a daily basis. Is it something I didn't realize is that they have a sports program. State council or using habitat and then looking for places put the toilet, go for tortoises, so that's 60 go for tortoises. We got to see some. We saw 2 different ones. So, that's pretty, most people don't get to see go for tortoises, so hopefully you can come join us.
Yeah, they are native to Dade. That's an introduction site. They are historic to that area, and they've reintroduced them. It's a pine rockland. It's very, very sandy, so it's appropriate for tortoises who dig burrows. And their burrows are very important for fires, for other critters to go hide in during a fire. It's a pretty neat preserve. It's fenced in, which also makes it good for tortoises so that they don't leave theoretically and get hit by cars. Go ahead, Karina. I would guess it's 25 acres, but there's an extension next. There's an addition right next to it. I think it's named after an old Miami Herald reporter. So it's by what I know is Tamiami Airport, which is now called, I think, Miami Executive Airport. All right, thank you, Scott. Just to remind you, next month, or not next month, in March, almost next month, is Native Plant Day. And it's on March 21st, and it will be held at Amelia Earhart Park. And Daniela, who's our chair for the 2026 Native Plant Day Committee, will tell you all about it.
Please help me, because so it is the only and the biggest only event we are doing every year. It's the 28th time this is happening. And I just really, really would like to ask you if you are anyway planning on attending to give a couple hours to volunteer. We as the board alone cannot make it happen. And I know I already talked several of you into this and I pleaded with you and it is hard to find volunteers. It gets even harder if I ask you to show up on a Saturday morning at 7 a.m. in the northern part of the county. Unfortunately, that weekend is the first weekend of spring break. And so usually we try to get high school students and we are trying and we're so, but you get it. I'm getting a little bit nervous. Okay, now the location. That's also a bit tricky this year because there is always this idea, oh, it's in the northern part of the county. Oh, it's so far away. I'm not making it up there. Let me tell you, most of you, it would take you much longer to get to Castello Hammock, where it was last year, than to up there. If you take the Palmetto and you drive to Hialeah on a Saturday morning without rush hour traffic, it will take you, no joke, only 30 minutes. I've done that drive now so many times. Believe me, it's really only 30 minutes. Amelia Earhart Park is, you go up the Palmetto, the last exit before the Palmetto bends You go off, you take that exit, you drive into Hialeah, and within 8 to 10 minutes, that road leads you to the park. It's super easy to get there. Okay. Please tell all your friends when you're advertising for this that the location is amazing. We are in a corner of the park under beautiful oak coverage. It's really a gorgeous site, and it's going to be amazing the way we can sit up there, the whole atmosphere of that location. It's really, really special. So please go back, read the newsletter we sent out in January. Please read the newsletter coming out in February. You will see all the details. You will see my email address. It tells you exactly about volunteering, and also important, growing plants. I know some of you are growing plants for the event. Please help us. I'm trying to streamline it, how we are doing it this year in preparation to the event, that at the event itself, we can keep the chaos as low as possible. Please read what we are asking you to do with regard to growing plants. The one special thing I would like to mention, Raul Moas was kind enough to offer this. You can bring your plants to next month's meeting here, even if they are not finished, and Raul will grow them out for us, okay? So that's for sure an option where I would encourage you to take advantage of that, because we know he knows what he's doing, right? So yeah, otherwise, please just read the details you can go back to the last newsletter and this upcoming newsletter, but I highly encourage you. It's going to be an amazing event. Please help us make it happen.
Thank you, Daniela. So. All right, so she needs volunteers. We need volunteers. And if you're growing plants, drop them off at Raul's house, or go drop them off the next meeting, and he'll take care of them. All right, a little ahead of the game here, but I wanted to let you know that we did the Florida Native Plant Society Executive Director, Melissa Fernandez, is going to be at the Native Plant Day, she said, and she's also offered to give a program for us the following Tuesday. She's from Miami. We've never had the ED give a talk for us, but she's going to be sharing with us the things that FNPS does and is doing. I know a lot of us think that the chapter is the Florida Native Plant Society. The Florida Native Plant Society is a lot more. And it'll give you an opportunity to ask questions and maybe see how you might be able to help the state organization. Just a general call for volunteers. We already talked about Native Plant Day. We talked about the Conservation Restoration Team. We've talked about if you wanted to bring food for the monthly meetings, and other outreach events. Harley's here. Harley, stand up. So he's our chair of our Education Outreach Committee, and he's also looking for people. You know, people are always asking, especially when we get closer to Earth Day, you know, can you come to our show? Would you like a booth? Would you like a table? And if you have a nice smile, as I said, and you have to wear deodorant, then you can volunteer for the Education Outreach Committee. So. Another announcement is the Dade Native Plant Workshop, which is not affiliated with the Native Plant Society other than the fact that I lead it. We're having a meeting at the Miami-Dade College Kendall campus on February 17th. And the topic is the sumac or cashew family, the Anacardiaceae. At that workshop, you learn how to identify plants. You can bring stuff from your yard that you don't know what it is, and we'll help you figure it out. Are there any other announcements? All right, that covers it. I will talk about some plants that are at the table. And if you're gonna buy raffle tickets after the talk, Susan is selling them in the back. So the whole bag of black sapote, not a native plant, but a delicious fruit. You really need to wait till these are dead ripe though. These are not quite ripe yet. Who brought these? So they're fine to pick them green and then you just let them get really soft?
Yes, they'll get a little darker and really soft, and leave on my countertop. So they probably need about a week or so.
So,
Recipes in there too.
oh, cool. Yeah, sapote is actually a persimmon. And Adrian could probably tell you more about it better than I, but I think sapote is a Mayan word for fruit in general. So there's a lot of different trees called sapote that are in different plant families. They're not related. All right, we got a nice native small shrub. I like this. I love this steak made out of a plastic fork. This is a maidenberry with the folk art here. And this gets to be about like this tall. Can get a little bit taller. Like if you're at the Keys, they get 12 feet tall, but they're much older. It's related to quailberry. It'll have a little pretty red fruit. Berry-like, it'll grow in shady or partial shade as well as sun. And then we have someone who's very conservative on their soil use. Deep inside this pot is a Simpson stopper. So you can see it's shade loving there. Simpson stopper is a native shrub that could get.
There's no stop needed.
I saw Roger Hammer has a gorgeous Simpson stopper tree, which is one of the biggest ones I've seen in someone's yard. It's got a trunk like that. I love that tree. I have it in my yard. It's a great popular tree for migratory birds, especially in October when they'll often fruit, and real fragrant flowers, real pretty bark. So we got some really cool wildflowers. Did you grow these, Raul? This is yours, no? Who grew these? You grew, wow. Thistle's really hard to germinate. This is purple thistle. And this is a favorite for butterfly people because it's the host plant for the little metal bark. And they're spiky, but it's native. It's not weedy. I know people think it is actually pretty hard to get to germinate. It does grow on roadsides and stuff, but this is, I think it's a perennial, but it dies back. Is it a biennial? Okay, so it'll form out these and then eventually put up a bloom stalk. They're blooming right now in the park. So if you were at the field trip, you might have seen some. All right, and we got something that's it's a Florida native. It's not really in Miami. This is Stokes aster, which is native to like 2 counties in the Panhandle. So it'd be like us selling something from the Bahamas as native would be more appropriate than this, in my opinion. Sorry. It is pretty, it grows very easily. But just be aware, if you have like an arboretum yard, it's fine. Here we have a native, which I knew was Gar angustifolia, now it's Oenothera simulans. Southern bee blossom, I think is one of the common names. It's got this basal rosette like that thistle, and it'll put out this long bloom spike with little reddish flowers. They're cute. Full sun. Stokes needs full sun too, right? Yeah. So all these are sun. And then, I can't believe you're selling this. This would be like selling Bidens. So this is Eleochris geniculata, and if you plant this, it will come up in every pot and everywhere in your yard. It is a wetland plant, it's a spike rush, and the seeds are minute. But I guess a dove might be able to pick them out of the ground, or certainly ants eat them. So if you want to increase your ant habitat, ants are important. And then we have another wildflower. This is a nice one. This is an edible fruit. This is Walter's ground cherry. And you can see this is a cousin of tomato. It's got these pendulant flowers, and it'll have this little husk around it. This grows in pine rocklands, and as well as coastal uplands like Coastal Strand. This needs full sun. Pretty tasty fruit for a wild fruit. Then we have these native violets, and this does look like the one from Miami. The one from Miami actually has white flowers. The original provenance is somewhere near Matheson when I originally collected this a million years ago. And then Don Keller showed me where they were, the late Don Keller. And this is a nice wildflower. They bloom this time of year. It'll grow in shade pretty well, and it's pretty tough. It's a great lawn weed. It'll persist in your lawn. It's a host plant for the variegated fritillary, but you kind of need to have habitat for that. Like I've seen variegated, like where we have native plant day, they occupy that space because there's like these prairies near there. So this is a nice wildflower that grows in shade. All right, we'll take a pause and we'll come back here. Here we have a coastal ragweed, Ambrosia hispida, which has a cool kind of a silvery texture to it. And it grows in coastal uplands along the beach dunes. Needs full sun. This one doesn't have a label, or is it on the pot? So is this a sand pine?
No, it was, I ordered some seeds.
Is this supposed to be a slash pine?
It is.
Wow, the needle is very small. So this is our Dade County pine. You said you got it from the forestry? An elite. So this is some cultivar, and not really native. This is like the silviculturalists are creating this super pine
I bought it
because of the logging. Sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're going to grow this,
unlabeled, it's the kind of,
yeah, I don't know the ethical thing about planting this as a native, but pine trees are cool. We're going to learn about them today. I mean, that's why they built mills, is to log. I think predominantly, I would assume, log our conifers. Although they might have logged oaks. Definitely log cypress. This is a pine tree. You need space. It's going to become a big tree. So, and here we have, yeah, that's a nice.
Like,
Just making sure. I guess they do have opposite leaves. Crugiodendron ferrum. This is a very slow to moderately slow growing tree. Grows in hammocks. The wood is so heavy it sinks. It's one of the 2 native trees that has really heavy wood, and but it's a nice medium-sized tree, fairly tough, pest resistant. It's a great addition to a hammock.
slow growing.
Yeah, slow growing. It has a blackberry that birds will eat. The flowers aren't showy; they're greenish. And then here we have, oh, butterfly pea. So this is a Centrosema virginiana. This is the one that has the larger pea flower that's kind of white and pink. This is a spurred butterfly pea, not to be confused with some of the milk peas, which they look like vegetatively. This one's hard to find, and you do want to make sure you get local germplasm as best you can, meaning seeds from our area. It does have a fairly broad range in the state, and a lot of the ones that we have here have very, very narrow leaves, but they'll start out with these wider leaves. So this is good for a pine rockland planting, or a chain link fence. It's not a very big vine. It's only going to get about 7 or 8 feet long. Elliott's aster. So this is a native wildflower. Asters are blooming right now, and this is another one that I consider perennial underground, where it'll grow fruit and then kind of die back and then come back. A lot of our asters will do that. Some of them are annuals though, but not this one. And this one has fairly large flowers, right? Elliott's aster? Yeah. Yeah, the ones I've seen are along Loop Road. In the Big Cypress Swamp, there's a bunch of it. And here we have a white stopper, huh? Yeah. So we saw this, we had the Simpson stopper over here. Here's a white stopper. And this is such a classic Native Plant Society plant because someone brought in the whole party here. You got all these little guys in here. Someone dug this out of their yard. It's heavy. So they use the local soil. That's okay. That's great. So you have all the mycorrhiza you need from their yard. White stopper is a nice small tree. You can use it as a hedge. It's the one that smells a little skunky or smells like weed, so I've been told. And usually in the afternoons, it does have pretty white flowers, and insects will visit it, and the fruits the birds will eat. So this is a great addition to your yard if you have a hammock or a hedge or just an accent tree. We have some more wildflowers here. How am I doing on time? I'm running out of time. We got an assemblage here of shrubby thoroughwort, which is a tropical shrub that gets fairly tall. but it gets full of flowers, Coenophyllon villosum, needs sun. We have, oh no. Okay. So this thing's going around, and I'm not disputing its identification. But if you go in our pine rocklands, our twin flower doesn't look like this at all. So if you start buying this type of twin flower, and this is my opinion, you're bringing in a different germplasm into the new area. So you really want to try and stick to local germplasm as best you can. That's one of the weaknesses. A lot of native plant nurseries get, they swap plants and move them around. And this is one that I'm a little bit concerned with because it could hybridize with our native germplasm. And why is that a problem? Well, what's considered the same species today, tomorrow might be considered different species. This happens a lot. So then when you move this over there, certain plants really sensitive to that, some of the really endangered mints you don't ever want to move around. So this one is a real pretty wildflower, but I think this is the one that comes from up in near Wellington in the Palm Beach. I think this is the coastal one though. It says pineland black anthers. It might be the pineland one. It's very healthy. Plants in cultivation can often look very robust.
That is not Nivea, that's Carnifolius.
I'm saying it looks like Nivea, but I'm just saying what I'm explaining is things in cultivation do weird things. So sometimes they can look really robust when in nature they look like these little scrappy things. This is real pretty white heads. It's in a composite family, so it looks like a flower is actually several flowers. And this is a great pollinator plant. If you ever watch butterfly talks, a lot of times when they take pictures of butterflies, they're on this plant. So this is, they call it snow square stem or pineland black anthers. We got a native giant flowered candyweed here. I'm glad that this is being brought back in cultivation. This is one, if you were to pull it up, which I'm not going to, it smells like Pepto-Bismol. They call it candy root weed. And this one was highlighted. You can read about it in the Tillandsia. This is frostweed, Verbicina virginica. That's a great plant, although it'll set seed everywhere in your yard. We got some privets. We got another ground cherry here. We got a nice assemblage of blue porterweed. This is the native one, not the non-native one. The native one will often, the teeth are bigger and often this little rust, which is okay. It's not going to kill it. We got a wild coffee. This is a Eustoma exaltatum, which is a seaside gentian. Has a real pretty purple flower. Yes. We got some Tillandsias. I kind of feel like you should take one if you want it. We have a nice small tree here, 7-year apple, grows in coastal uplands and in the Keys, which I guess every upland in the Keys is coastal. Here we have native tick seed, and this looks like the local germplasm based upon the leaf shape. It needs some water. We have Spanish stopper, so we got a third stopper. We have the Simpson, the white, and here's the Spanish. They all kind of grow very similarly. They're kind of small trees. They're great for hedges. That one's the coastal one. We have a Florida bitterbush. This is the one that's native to Brickle hammock. That grows in a lot of shade. It will spread a bit in your yard, just be aware. And then the bleedy is for you to look at, not to bid on. And then down here, one of our members brought in this really nice piece of artwork for the raffle. So you might get lucky. I don't think they're necessarily native palms, but it's real pretty. All right, and that's the raffle. Oh. All right, we'll move them over. These are the lantanas. So we have our lantana volucrata, which is button sage or wild sage. And then Ricky's going to help get a cup on that. So that's another pine rockland species with white flowers. It's another one that the butterflies love. Okay, tonight we have a cool talk about the sawmills of South Dade. And yes, South Dade was a logging area. It was dominated by, a large portion was dominated by coniferous forest. And our speaker tonight is Jeff Blakley. I've known Jeff at least since the early 2000s, maybe the 90s. And I recall when he acquired his home, which was the late botanist Julia Morton's home, located in Chrome Hammock, he was excited at the opportunity to restore it and make things better. And he has graciously let our chapter have field trips on his property in the past. It's a really nice hammock to showcase its rare plants and the beautiful Rockland hammock habitat. Jeff was born in Miami-Dade County, and he's lived here his entire life, like me. He has always been interested in history, and in his retirement, he has indulged in his passion. He writes for his website, Historic South Dade, hsdade.com, and explores themes relating to the early development of South Dade. That's a huge subject, which has not received much attention from historians. Let's give a warm welcome to Jeff. We got two things going on here. This is for the YouTube. Is your mic for that? There we go. That's the pocket of your belt. Okay. Ready.
Okay. Well, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. I put this slide up because it's 15 locations where there were sawmills here in Dade County. And I wanted to, I'm not gonna cover all of these areas, don't have enough time, but I want to point out one. Oh, okay. Okay. I wanted to just identify one area here that a lot of people, I don't think anybody here knows about. This is Orange Glade. It was an area west of downtown Miami from about 17th Avenue to 37th Avenue. And it was on both sides of Orange Glade Road. So you're going to ask, well, where's Orange Glade Road? It is now known as Tamiami Trail, Southwest 8th Street. And it was called Orange Glade because they grew a lot of citrus there. So all the rest of the area, I'll point out too, Benson. I doubt that anybody knows where that is. That's about a quarter mile north of the falls. It's on 87th Avenue and 132nd Street. So this right here, and I don't know how we get rid of that. How you get rid of the green and the red down there at the bottom? Or move it up?
That's the recording of it.
Okay, all right. All right, well, these are two houses on the Orange Glade Road, and the reason I put them in there is because I wanted to show you that there's pine trees in the background. A lot of people, when they talk about pine rocklands in South Dade, they think, well, it's always like Perrine and Cutter Ridge and maybe Killian, but they don't realize that there were pine trees real close to downtown Miami. This was cleared, and you see that these houses, and I verified it. That addition there, right there, was in 1897. So as far west as this is at 17th Avenue and Orange Glade Road. So in 1897, just a year after Miami was established, you had houses all the way out a mile and a half, 2 miles away from downtown Miami. And in the front, you see the crops that they're growing in their front yard. I don't know, there was earlier, Steve said something about sandy soils farther north, because I don't believe you have the pine rockland that we have in South Dade up close to Miami, but you still had plenty of pine trees. This is the Cutler Dock. It was built with lumber sawed by a man named James Henry Young, who brought his sawmill down here from Bunnell, which is like 75 miles south of Jacksonville on the East Coast. And he brought it down in the summer of 1899 and set it up. And this dock was demolished by Charles Deering when he bought the property because he was dredging the turning basin. So the dock is gone. This picture was taken from the Richmond Cottage, looking towards these boats, because this is where the farmers on the Cutler Glade brought their crops. People might know about Tom Peters, known as the Tomato King. He and a number of other farmers brought their crops here to the dock to ship north. Now, James Henry Young cut all of the pine trees in the immediate area of the Richmond Cottage, and then he went across, he took his sawmill across the glade to Perrine because the FEC Railroad had reached Perrine by the middle of 1903, set up his sawmill there, cut more timber, and then when he ran out there, he went down to Princeton in 1907, and he probably worked for the Drake Sawmill, Drake Lumber Company. How many people know about the Drake Lumber Company? Anybody? Nobody ever heard of the Drake Lumber Company? Interesting. Okay, thank you. So he was a lumberman from a long ways back. He went out to Washington State in 1910, and then he came back to Princeton. So anybody know where Princeton is? This is a soil map, but I included it because I wanted to show you the colors here. The pink is the highland, and the purple here is the marl prairie. And these areas right in here are the finger glades that allow the Everglades to drain into Biscayne Bay. This area right here is where the first farming took place in South Dade. They grew tomatoes for the most part because it was easy to grow there. They could just burn off the sawgrass, turn over the soil, and grow tomatoes. But then they also grew crops in the pine rockland. This is not exclusively, they grew crops here before they logged, and I'll show you a picture later on about that. But the majority of the crops were grown on this area here. It was called the front prairie, which probably is the opposite of the rear prairie, which is the Everglades. And then later on, it was called the East Glade. And now, of course, there's no East Glade left. It's all houses. So an orange glade is here at the top. And I wanted to point out here, the Deering Estate here. See that pink area there? See how close it gets to the coastline there? It's the only place that I know of in Dade County where pine trees grew right down to the water. You know, everywhere else you've got mangroves and marl prairie and wetland plants. And this is the Cutler taken from the water. This is the Richmond Cottage here. And right here is the Cutler dock. And here's all the pine trees. All gone. This is the Brown and Moody store at Cutler. It was located inside what is now the Deering Estate. It's behind the rock wall where 168th Street ends at the rock wall. And I put it in the presentation because of the pine trees. This lumber was very likely cut by James Henry Young. There was no reason to bring it in from Miami when you had a sawmill right there on the premises. It was built in 1900. And what's interesting too about this photograph here is in this doorway here, you can see there's a Seminole Indian man standing here, and there's two women standing here, and the woman right here is holding a baby. So the Seminole Indians they did their trading here at the Brown and Moody store in addition to the white settlers. This is a man who nobody knows anything about now. His name is Charles T. McCrimmon. He was quite the operator and an entrepreneur. And he was a very early lumberman in Dade County, which at the time, of course, went up to Juneau. But he came to Miami in 1896 and started sawing. You know, he had a bunch of odd jobs first, but he was very close to the higher ups in the FEC Railroad. And he had the contract to clear the right-of-way for what they called the Cutler Extension, which is known as the Homestead Extension later on. It's the portion of the railroad that came from Miami down to Homestead. And he got started on that in 1903, January of 1903. And the right-of-way was 200 feet wide legally, and 28 miles long. He didn't clear it 200 feet wide, but I'll show you a picture later on of the right of way where it was cleared. But that's a lot of trees to cut down, 28 miles worth. And this particular advertisement, the punch bowl, that's at 3007 Brickell. It's right on the shoreline. It doesn't have any water in it anymore because of the lowering of the water table in the Everglades. But in the early days, the mariners and settlers went there to get fresh water. And his mill says it's a half-mile west of the punch bowl. Could be, I don't know. But he was quite the operator. He was all over northern, what I call northern South Dade, you know, because I refer to South Dade as ghouls down the Homestead, but that's just me. And this is a really interesting picture. And the person who named that dredge, this is at Lake Surprise, and it's FEC equipment. They called it the prickly heat. Well, we know what summer's like in South Florida, right? The reason I included this picture is because of this right here. That boom. At some point, this was taken in July of 1906, and at some point after that, that boom apparently broke because they towed it to the FEC docks in Miami, and they replaced it with a timber that was 12 inches square and 66 feet long. That's a big timber. And again, it's the date there is July of 1906. The Drake Sawmill did not get started, did not cut its first log until November of 1907. There's a lot of people think that the Drake Lumber Company cut a lot of the lumber for the extension, and that's not true. This is a map of the holdings of the FEC Railroad, the Model Land Company, which was a subsidiary of the FEC, and also the Perrine Grant Land Company. Black Point, which a lot of people think about the marina out there, it actually got it. There's actually a geographical feature called Black Point, and a lot of people don't know it, but there used to be a navigable stream from here up almost to the Brock Ridge. It was called Black Point Creek. The Perrine Grant runs from 67th Avenue west to 127th Avenue and from 104th Street down to 200th Street. That's 36 square miles. How many people know the story of Henry Perrine, Indian Key? He was killed in 1840. He received a conditional grant in 1838. It took his heirs 50 years to get a title to it. They got title to it in 1897. There was a lawsuit that they had to get out of the way in 1898. And in 1899, they flipped it to the Perrine Grant Land Company for $100,000. Sound familiar? This is right here, this little line here is what they called the Homestead Road, and that's how the settlers got to Cutler to get their supplies. It wasn't really a road. It was just a rough path through the woods with all the rocks and trees and whatever, but that's how the settlers got to Cutler. Now this is a picture of the railroad right-of-way below Kendall in November of 1903. You can see this little notch here. So you had a straight path for quite a distance here in south. They didn't cut all of it, like I said earlier. They didn't cut the whole 200 feet. They only cut what they needed to cut. But this is before the railroad right-of-way or the railroad bed was built. This gentleman here is Edward Graham. He was the captain of James Ingram's private yacht, the Enterprise. James Ingram was the third vice president of the FEC, and he was also the captain of at least one of the rear paddle wheel steamboats that came from the Mississippi River that were used to build the Key West extension. And I included this. This was taken on the same trip. You can see a man standing here. I've enlarged it here. You can see how big that pine tree is compared to the man. And you can see all of the pine trees. I mean, the place was, it was not like it was described in the literature. They say there was, you know, it was dark and dank and full of bears and panthers and snakes and vines and whatever else can reach out and snatch you. It wasn't like that at all. It was an open forest. And of course, you've got a lot of saw palmetto, And no doubt there's a whole bunch of coontie growing in there too. This is an eggplant crop near Gould's. It's near Haneland Mill Drive, which is southwest 216th Street. It's about a half a mile west of Dixie Highway. And this is in 1902. You can see again the density of the pine trees and the size of the pine trees. What they did here was they got a whole bunch of black laborers to come in and grub out the palmettos and take the coontie to the nearest coontie mill, and then they planted eggplant. Yes.
When you say FEC,
I'm sorry, it's the Florida East Coast Railroad. I'm sorry. Excuse me? Yes, that's true. Yeah, well, some people don't know this, but the busway now is the path of the Florida East Coast Railroad. You know, so this is a picture, and I included this picture because it shows a prairie, a finger glade here. The pine trees in the background. This was taken, might have been taken by William Crome. I don't know if people know who William J. Crome was. He was the chief, after Joseph Meredith died in 1909, he was the chief engineer for the extension, for the Florida East Coast extension to Key West, from Homestead to Key West. He did a survey from December of 1902 to June of 1903 that went down to Cape Sable, and these people here, this guy here and this guy here, they're carrying something called a stadia rod, which is used in mapping, because South Dade was surveyed in 1847 by a man named John Jackson, but there were no maps created, there was no roads. The FEC didn't know what was there, and so they sent Crome on this expedition. And you know, you see all of the pine trees here and all of the finger glade here. This is a rock crusher, belongs to the FEC, and they mined lime rock to make the roadbed or the bed for the railroad, which was used from Florida City to Key Largo, because that's all marl down there. Of course, they used it in other places too, but this picture here is looking north on what is now the busway, because this is the railroad tracks. And what you see here, to see this rock outcropping here, I'm sure that you've gone down South Dixie Highway thousands of times and you've looked to the right, because this area right here is the Pineland Preserve from 144th Street down to 152nd Street. And if you look at to the right as you're driving south, you'll see that rock outcrop. That's what this is here, because the railroad had to have grade. They didn't go up and down. They went flat. And so that's what they've done here. This is a lumber company that I discovered in my research that nobody's ever heard of. They're called the Lindsay Lumber Company. It came down here from Wisconsin in 1913, and they set up shop at Aventina. Nobody's ever heard of Aventina either. People have heard of Perrine, but the mill was at Aventina, which was at the intersection of Richmond Drive and Tallahassee Road, which is just west of where Metro Zoo is now. There's nothing left of it. There's maybe some metal detector person could find some nails or something, but there's nothing left of it. They say they had a shipping station to Perrine, which they did. They had a tram line that ran to Perrine from Aventina, carrying millions of feet of lumber. The Lindsay Lumber Company was at least as large as the Drake Lumber Company. And I'll show you a picture later of the lumber at the Drake Lumber Company. But Lindsay Lumber Company had schooners, lumber schooners. They owned 5 of them, and they were strictly an export company. They exported everything to Cuba, Nassau, Honduras, Jamaica, the West Indian Islands, and it was a very large operation. You know, that's all they did, and they lasted until 1924 when they set up a retail store in Miami, which was a block south of the Drake Lumber Company retail store, and they went out of business in 1929 during the Depression, and they've been forgotten. But at one point, they were shipping 150 freight car loads of lumber every month, and of those 150 cars, 50 of them were of Dade County pine. The other 100 were from North Florida and South Georgia. This is taken on the Homestead Road. How many people know where Anderson's Corner is? Okay, all right, this is 1 mile west of Anderson's Corner. He was an early settler, and this right here was their first house. You can see it's built out of pine logs. Those cracks, I don't think anybody lived there in the summertime. And you have the outhouse here. This is Henry and his daughter Sadie, who married into the Belen family, and his son Otis. But back here in the back is a house that's built out of sawn lumber. So what they probably did, all this cleared area here in the front, they brought in the sawmill, sawed the lumber for the house, built it, and then took the sawmill elsewhere. This is Hobbsville in Silver Palm. Don't know exactly where. It is a temporary operation. You can see the ragged end of the roof there, and big clearing here, and some pine trees in the background. They would cut to maybe 1 mile or 2 radius of the sawmill because it was hard to put the logs on carts and haul them to the sawmill, and then they would just dismantle the mill and take it someplace else. They were very mobile. I don't know what they did with the shed. Maybe they burned it, maybe they abandoned it, no telling. Now this is a more substantial mill. This is the Van Winkle and Mackert sawmill. How many people know where the Redland store is? Oh, okay. Bower Drive and Redland Road. 264th Street. This is 264th Street and Country Club Road at 202nd Avenue. Got started in 1914. It was out of business by 1922. Only lasted 8 years, but it was a more substantial operation because you can see this right here is where the boiler is to generate steam to run the sawmill. I don't know what that is in the background. It looks like smoke, but this was a substantial operation. But again, it didn't last very long because as soon as they cut all the trees down, it was gone. This is an interesting shot here. This is in downtown Florida City, right close to where the parking lot is for the busway, the stop at Palm Drive and on the busway. So you can see that downtown Florida City had a whole bunch of pine trees. And these steam tractors were, I don't know how common they were not cheap. So they were fairly expensive, but you got a flywheel here and a long belt that runs out to the shaft that the saw blade is mounted on, big pile of sawdust, a bunch of trees and of lumber. This guy was James Benjamin Brown. He sold locally. He did not export, but he also sold to the Drake Sawmill, the Drake Lumber Company. But it's like any other kind of business. You sell to the highest bidder, but whoever was going to buy your lumber. And this is the Case 210 steam tractor that was in the previous picture. I got this from the internet. You can see the flywheel here. And if anybody's interested, there's an outfit in Florida called the Florida Flywheelers. They have a really interesting 30-minute video that you can watch on YouTube about how this tractor was hooked up and the whole machinery and how the logs were sawn. The blades on these sawmills were about 4 feet in diameter, and there was no protection. One wrong step and you either cut your leg off or you cut yourself in half. It was really a high hazardous occupation. This is the Jeffrey sawmill in Homestead. It was just a little bit west of the Seaboard Airline tracks on Maury. Got started in 1913 by a man by the name of Wyckoff. He went into partnership with Bert Jeffrey in 1916. And interestingly enough, it lasted until 1949. I don't know exactly how they got their lumber, but they obviously had trucks and roads, and people probably brought logs to the mill to be sawn. But the documentation on sawmills is very, very difficult to find. But this is a rare picture. It's taken in 1925. And here's another reason you have no more pine trees in South Florida, or South Dade, railroad ties. This is taken at Lake Surprise. And this barge here you can see it still has half a load of cross ties on it. There's something like 2,800 ties per mile of railroad. And if it's 120 miles from Key West to home to Florida City, that's a lot of railroad ties. And they were not treated, so they deteriorated fairly quickly. There was a man by the name of Rayford, as in Rayford State Prison, L. Sparkman, who had a contract with my friend Charles McCrimmon, who I spoke of earlier, to cut 100,000 ties per year for 3 years. And McCrimmon, of course, turned it around and sold them to the FEC. This is what they call a log skidder. It belonged to the Drake Lumber Company. And it operates the same way as the dredge earlier, but a boom. There's a winch there's a winch in here, a cable goes over the top and out, and they haul the cable out to the woods, fasten it to a log, and haul it in close to the railroad tracks. This is on a railroad track. You can see the horizontal lines right here is the railroad track. There's a flat car over here somewhere out of the picture. They drag the logs in, load them onto the car, and the train locomotive would haul them to the mill. Now the Drake Lumber Company, we got more evidence on the Drake Lumber than on the Lindsay. But this was a very big operation. This is a map of the Drake Lumber Company. The Drake Lumber Company was a Coconut Palm Drive on the north side of Coconut Palm, on the west side of the busway. That's 248th Street. It's in Princeton. It went out of business in 1919. It operated from 1907 to 1919. And what the Sanborn Fire Insurance Company was a nationwide insurance company. They were in the business of insuring companies against fire, obviously. And they didn't want to lose money, like any business doesn't want to lose money. So they sent people out to make maps. And these are wooden buildings, and the blue buildings are concrete buildings. So they would assess it and say, okay, you're going to pay this X number of dollars per year. Up here, you can't see it, but up here, it says average amount of lumber on hand. And it says 750,000 feet. Now that's lineal feet. That's not board feet. That's lineal feet. That's still a lot of lumber. And this is probably that 750,000 feet. Why it's stacked like that, I do not know. There's a man standing here by a cart with some logs on it, or some lumber. These piles of lumber are probably 25 feet high and 25 feet wide. I don't know why they haven't loaded them onto a railroad car, but this gives you an idea how big an operation the Drake Lumber Company was. And this is in Princeton. And this is a lumber schooner, 5-masted one. This is not in the Port of Miami. The biggest lumber schooner that ever came to Miami was a 4-masted schooner, and it was owned by the Lindsay Lumber Company. There were these 5-masted, and they even made schooners that were even longer. They even had 6- and 7-masted schooners. And some of these schooners would carry 1 million feet of lumber. And the point I'm trying to make here is that Dade County, a lot of people think Dade County pine stayed in Dade County. It did not. It was a very big export business here. And that's where the name Dade County pine comes from, because it was a marketing term. It has nothing to do with the tree. You know, it was like, oh, Dade County pine is a wonderful product and buy it, you know. It was a big advertising campaign. So this is, I don't know where it was taken. I've tried to find out where it was taken, but I was unsuccessful. But it's probably taken in the 1920s, because you've got, or maybe the late teens, because of the motorized trucks and all the lumber backed up to it. And this is the end result. This is what everybody was trying to do. To the left, you have some pine trees here, and in the background are some pine trees, but this is a 130-acre citrus grove. And it was taken in 1925. The trees were planted in 1912, so they're 13 years old. It was taken from the roof of a house on the property. It belonged at this time to U.S. Senator Duncan U. Fletcher, who was a 4-term U.S. Senator in Florida early on. He was also the mayor of Jacksonville, and he served in the Florida House of Representatives. He bought it in 1925, but he bought it from a man named Arthur Wallace, but that means nothing. So, but this is what you have. This was the end goal. And this area here may have been logged like in 1910 or something like that. And this is what the trees were left, and they grew a little bit bigger over time, but of course they're gone now, and all in the background too. And then the end result, when you have that grove, is like, okay, I got this open land and I got all these tree stumps. What am I gonna do with them? You know, how do I get it? How do I maneuver? How do I plant trees? Well, the easy way was to dynamite, and that's a dynamite blast. And this is what's left of the pine stump after the blast. These two pictures were taken at the Chrome Grove at the corner of Avocado Drive and Chrome Avenue. That little piece of property right on the northwest corner was given by Isabella Chrome, and it's to the Audubon Society. It's a preserve, but the rest of it is a D.R. Horton subdivision now. So, and that's all I have to say tonight. You know, there's my email address and there's my URL. And if you are curious about a lot of the detail on the lumber mills, I've written 3 articles that I think are probably going to turn into a book. So if you want to go to the website, and you can read the articles for all the details. So thank you very much. Questions?
Any questions for Jeff?
Yes.
Random pictures and then associate them with them.
Well, I've been doing history for 10 years, and some of these pictures, you know, I collect them from various sources. Most of those pictures belong to either the Florida Pioneer Museum or to the Town Hall Museum in Homestead. But it's a process, you know. And you know, writing about sawmills came late in my, you know, it's like you can't write about a subject like this right off the bat. It's like you just can't go out on the internet and find some pictures and then start writing, you know, because the problem is that history in South Dade has not been written about because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of research involved, and and I don't know all the answers by a long shot. It's very humbling to do this kind of work. But yeah, the pictures came from various sources. Yes, Suzanne.
Was pine the only thing that was?
Oh no, not at all. They cut everything. You know, it was whatever was in the way, because pine trees were considered the enemy. You know, John C. Gifford, who most of you know who John C. Gifford was, Dr. Gifford. He actually said that the pines were absolutely worthless, and that if they could bring in somebody, because now the pines here in Dade County, they were not slash pines. They didn't do turpentine here. He said if they could find somebody to come in and turn them into tar, because you can get pine tar out of them, you would clear all these worthless trees from there would be nothing left. And this was in 1904. So that was the prevailing attitudes towards, because the pine trees were forests, and there were bears, there were panthers, cougars, there were lots of rattlesnakes, there were bobcats, there were foxes that ate chickens. And then the worst thing, of course, is the pine trees caught on fire. And they burned, not only did they burn the pine trees, of course, but they burned the orchards and the houses. So as far as the settlers were concerned here, we're going to get rid of all of these pine trees because they're nothing but a pain. They're just worthless. And so that's what happened. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. They had section corners, township corners, which is a township is 36 square miles of land. So they didn't have the sections marked, and just the township corners.
It was the last Dade County pine.
Cut?
Standing. And are they termite proof?
No, they're not termite proof. I was surprised because I got some salvaged lumber from the Caves house in Homestead, and I went to the Caves house to get it when the Lennar was rehabilitating it, shall we say. And I was surprised at how much, quote, Dade County pine, unquote, was full of termites. You know, they pulled out a lot of rotten, bad wood. So, because Dade County pine, like any other kind of pine, you got sapwood and you got heartwood. The pine that people talk about is durable and you can't drive a nail in and that kind of thing, that's the heartwood. But there's sapwood too, and the termites eat the sapwood. So, Yeah, the last Dade County fine? I would probably say shortly after Hurricane Andrew. What about you, Steve?
There's still Dade County fines.
Yeah, you've got some. You've got the pine preserves. Oh, no, 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 it still exists. There's some, and in,
All Big Pine Key, all those pinelands there, that's basically the same species.
yeah,
There's
well,
still pinelands here. And 11% of the Rock Ridge still exists in Everglades National Park.
right, right. And then I didn't cover Everglades National Park. There were sawmills down in Everglades Park too. But yeah, yeah, there's still Dade County pine here, but it's like 2% of the land area.
I've run into virgin trees in the big cypress.
Yeah, yeah,
And we're getting to the point now that when they stopped logging in the 50s, would you say?
yes, early 50s, right,
So that was already 75 years ago. So
right.
now the pines, a lot of the big pines that are here today are 75 years old.
Yeah, but a lot of the pines down here, the reason they were so hard is they grew so slowly. And some of those pines that I showed you pictures of were probably 200 to 300 years old when they were cut, you know, so like that one was 66 feet long and 12 inches square. That was an old pine tree.
Drive in some of the old neighborhoods like the Pearl Gables or in Miami Shores, even Hialeah, there's yard trees and pines.
Yeah. Pine trees that big? Oh, I'd have to see one that big. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Maybe I should already know the answer. But I tried pine trees, right from Dade County Pine.
Uh-huh,
Some of them are beautiful.
right. Oh, yeah,
Those all look scraggly, all the pictures. I mean, I grant you that they weren't taking pictures of the beautiful,
right.
but still. Some of them are, I expected to see more exfoliate or
Well, I
a
think
little bit denser.
I'm thinking, and Steve could probably fill you in on some of the details. I'm thinking that because they grow fairly close to each other, they didn't have a chance to spread out. But you're right. In Coral Gables, there are pine trees that are quite beautiful. They look like almost like bonsai. They're gorgeous, you know. But I would think that that's probably the reason they were growing so close together that they couldn't spread out.
Looking at some of your photos, it didn't appear to be horribly fire suppressed.
Oh,
I
no.
actually thought the pines were fairly far apart, but if you go to several places where they're really crowded in, it actually looked pretty good.
Well, it's probably because of the fires, and that's why, you know, it was open, you know, but you didn't see a lot of little pine trees either, you know, so, but the pictures are, you know, the pictures are what they are. You know, those pictures from 1903, they're 122 years old, you know, so there weren't people back then who were interested in pine trees like we're interested in them now. Yes, sir.
Is there any special challenges milling the Dade County pine because of its?
Yes, yes, there was. They had to pour turpentine on the blade to keep it from getting stuck in the wood. Correct. Yeah, yeah. Yes, ma'am. Yes, I have a few pictures of the fire towers, but yes, one. I think I don't know that I have one of the one that was in, well, first it was in Princeton, and then they moved it down to Navy Wells, and then they moved it someplace else. But I have a picture of a fire tower that was taken other place in Florida. They were all the same. They all built the same, you know, but yeah, they actually had a wooden fire tower at Royal Palm State Park that I remember as a kid going down to see it when I was like 6 years old, you know, so, but the later fire towers were built with steel. Yes, ma'am. One more.
We got more questions. We have time. You have
Yeah.
questions, Lily?
Program was awesome.
Thank you.
I love, and was privileged to care for our chief Jones.
Uh-huh.
Was a liquid project, Everglades National Park, and that's, you know, FNC, Juan Colson, and Daniel Beard, and Irvin Whitty, and land that he bought, but at the time, it not aware of the ecosystem.
Right, right,
And so, he sold it for the wood.
right, right. That was very
So it's not
common.
that I think, Pepper's views them to a certain extent, because they just were not aware of
Well, no,
the
that's true.
ecosystem.
That's true. I'm not judging these people. I'm just saying that this is how it was. It was all about raising tomatoes and um, and crops for the market and citrus in particular. And one thing that a lot of people don't know, a lot of people think that tomatoes were the first crop in Southeast Florida, and that's not true. The first crop was pineapples. They grew from Fort Pierce all the way down to Key West. And Elliott Key at one time was a very large pineapple plantation. So tomatoes came later, and then after that came citrus.
Sebastian, you had a question?
Yeah, you mentioned earlier how it has more turpentine on their blades cut down the pine tree. What sorts of other tools are they using to, initially cut down on the pine?
They were cut down with an axe on the front side. They made a notch on the front side, and then they used a 6 foot long, sometimes longer, crosscut saw on the back side. And that was a hazardous. If the tree didn't fall where they thought it was going to fall, some people got killed. So no, they didn't have chainsaws back in those days. Yes, sir. There isn't any wood here there's no lumber industry in Dade County anymore. I don't know about sustainable. I mean, the lumber is brought in from Canada, from Georgia, from out west, Brazil, wherever, I mean, this is a market economy. The commodities go to where you get the best price. So, well, yeah, I think there's a concept, because sustainable means that you plant trees with a rotation involved. You go back and you plant trees again. But a lot of the trees that are pine trees in particular, they're I don't know anything about that. It's somebody else knows more about it, but the wood is not. It's almost all sapwood. It's not heartwood. They don't let the trees grow long enough to get any heartwood. So they're not like a lot of the pine that was sold here in Dade County, which some people think that, okay, I've had a house built in 1940 and it's made out of Dade County pine because it's in Dade County. Well, that's not true, because the pine probably came from Georgia. And in the consumer's mind, the man that's just going to the lumber yard to get lumber, he doesn't know the difference between Dade County pine, longleaf pine, and slash pine, or any of it. As far as he's concerned, it's all the same. So there was an awful lot of lumber that was brought in from Georgia, from down here.
Yellow.
Yeah, yellow pine. They called it yellow pine too. So, but Dade County pine, like I said earlier, was a marketing term. It was all about creating cachet for the lumber that came from this area. Like, oh, buy Dade County pine because it's much better than longleaf pine, or it's much better than Georgia pine, or whatever else, and we can get a better price for it. So it's like I said, I've learned over the years doing history, it's never been about anything other than money. That's just the way it is. It's like, that's not a judgment call. It's just how it is. Lindsay Lumber Companies exported lumber because they could make more money exporting lumber than they could do selling it domestically. Very simple.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
Okay, thank you.
And I got that code. Thank you
All right,
very
if
much.
you wish to
Great
buy raffle
presentation.
tickets, Susan's raising her hand with tickets in the back. We got wonderful plans. If you don't have cash, we can take care of you with the credit card. We'll start the raffle in about 10 minutes, maybe 15.